Brazil, so you're sharing the South American market outlook here at Cereals North America. We've been hearing about dryness and concerns about the planting situation in many parts of South America. Maybe bring us up to speed. Are those concerns warranted?
Short answer, no, they're not. Not right now, anyways. I think the situation that we see right now in Brazil is it's way too early in the season to be concerned about dryness. Okay, and so what we want right now is to make sure that market participants understand what the production cycle in Brazil is. And although September and early October were dry, they were dry for most of the coffee and sugar areas of Brazil. Some of those areas also plant soybeans and corn, but coffee is in its blooming stage during September and October. So that's a very, very important time for the crop. Not so much soybeans. Soybeans don't really go in the ground until late October to November. Really, November is the thick of the planting season. And actually, Brazil has received fantastic rains here recently. So a lot of that concern is overdone. A lot of the concern about planting windows. People talking about, well, they're not going to be able to plant corn on beans, in the second crop. That's also inaccurate right now. As a matter of fact, Mato Grosso, which is the largest planting state in Brazil, is caught up. It's up to speed on their production and their seedings. I'm sorry. And so right now, there's no concern that is warranted. Again, make sure that's the key word right now.
Late planting, could that actually favor higher soybean yields if producers, cancel the subsequent corn crop rather than grow longer seasons? Absolutely. That's the thought of the market. That's part of the market talk that I wanted to make sure that we cross some T's and dot some I's. Listen, if we do see producers deciding not to plant corn on beans, exactly, they're simply going to decide to come back and plant full season beans instead of short season beans, and still have the possibility of planting cotton right behind instead of corn. Right, so there's a lot of dynamics that the market is not really talking about right now. I still hold to a very high Brazilian production number for soybeans at 96.2 million metric tons. But again, that's counting on good weather, on favorable weather throughout, specifically November, December, and January are the 3 months where weather is going to be key. About acreage expansion in South America, we continue to see that growth?
I believe so. Even with lower prices, you're going to see acreage expansion. You might see rotation between crops, more than likely favoring soybeans still. And that's an issue. That's something we need to really think about, because if the U.S. farmer next year goes and plants more soybeans, which everything points to the fact that he will, and then the Brazilian farmer raise again their area, we could be looking at levels, price levels that nobody thought possible, and we haven't seen since before the ethanol era, before pre-2007. So we need to really be careful and understand. But the Brazilian farmer understands that expansion is going to lead to a better livelihood further down the road. They understand that there's cycles, but also the farmers that have cash flow to invest into expansion of area right now, especially turning pasture into cropland, they'll do it.
We hear also about the political issues in Argentina regarding imports and some interesting things happening there. Is there any upside potential politically to the market?
Well, I think politically speaking, the soybean market right now has priced in, let's just say, the fact that the Argentinian farmer is hoarding their soybeans. I think that's already priced in the market. So my take on it is whatever comes out of that is actually bearish, because it will be, if something new comes out, they're not going to hoard any more than they're hoarding. So the news that breaks right now is going to be, okay, they're having to sell because of cash flow needs. They're having to sell because they had some sort of deal with the government, or the government is simply forcing them to do it some way, somehow. Because the government, remember, the government needs that export tariff revenue. They really need it. So I think, the Argentina situation is delicate, and there's some people right now trying to draw comparisons between the Argentine farmer and the Argentinian farmer and the Brazilian farmer, saying the Brazilian farmer is going to turn into a hoarder because of low prices. Quite frankly, that's I don't believe that in one bit. Also, make sure that people understand the dollar is high in Brazil, and it's helping to buffer the farmer down there from a lot of the fall in international prices.
That's the U.S. dollar you're talking about?
Correct, the U.S. dollar, sorry.
So can you expand on that, how that's looking?
Well, the Brazilian farmer, they plant in reais, right, in the local currency, but they sell in dollars because a lot of it is for the export market. So when that happens, you have an advantage, to a rising dollar, an advantage that a producer in the U.S. won't have. As a matter of fact, the U.S. producer with a high dollar suffers, right? Because their product's now less competitive in the world market. So the Brazilians, they benefit from that. Now, they don't benefit from that when it comes time to pay for inputs, because some of the inputs are also paid in dollars, right? So really there's two sides to this equation, but the high dollar, every time you hear about a high dollar, it may be a high dollar helping the farmer to sell, it's true in Brazil because it really helps the price quite a bit. Absolutely right. The Canadian farmer that's exporting, he's going to know. He's going to listen. That's fine. The Canadian dollar goes low. For me, that's not a problem at all, right? So again, that's a luxury that Canada, Brazil, Argentina, Russia, Ukraine, Australia all have the luxury for a rising dollar that the U.S. does not have.
So overall, this paints a fairly bearish outlook for soybean markets, considering what people are saying.
It does if you consider favorable weather. And if you don't consider favorable weather, I still believe with the amount of production that we're going to have in the United States this year, and with the amount of production that you possibly could have in Brazil and South America, you're talking about possibility of 160 million metric tons plus in South America this year. Last year was 155, a record. You're talking about a possibility of lower prices, again, without a catastrophic weather event.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.